Good morning, everyone. My name is Naoko Shimazu. I am with the Institutes for the Advanced University of University of Tokyo and a professor of Tokyo College, and my specialty is history. I am the moderator of today's event. Today, the lecturer is Professor Kim Han. He is a guest professor at the Tokyo College. Professor Kim is a professor of anthropology at the Yonsei University, and his specialty is colonialism, political philosophy, and modern and current history of Eastern Asia intelligence and post-colonialism in East Asia. In Japanese language, he has published from a book from Iwanami, publishing in 2010, on the threshold of Japanese empire. Today, he is going to give us a very intriguing lecture on the modern culture of Korea and democracy. Today, we have a commentator, Professor Ishii Tsuyoshi. He is at the University of Tokyo, the professor of arts and science, and the Eastern Asian Academy for New Liberal Arts president. His specialty is modern Chinese philosophy and ideology. We have a message to the audience. The Tokyo College webinar series offers simultaneous interpretation in English. Please click the translation button at the bottom of the screen to switch to English. And for the Q&A session, please post your question in English or Japanese in the chat box on the screen. For this session, it is strictly forbidden to record the lecture or capture images by taking photographs of them. We would appreciate your cooperation.
Tokyo College webinar series offers simultaneous interpretation in English. Please click the translation button at the bottom of the screen, which looks like a little globe, to switch to English. Also, for the Q&A session, please post your questions in English or Japanese in the chat box on the screen. For this session, it is strictly forbidden to record the lecture or capture images by taking photographs of them. We would appreciate your cooperation.
With that, Professor Kim, the floor is yours. Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction. My name is Kim Han. Currently, I am the guest professor of Tokyo College, and I'm originally with Yonsei University. As Professor Shimazu introduced, and my specialty is on anthropology, but it is more on the cultural studies. That is my particular focus on various culture and politics and also the post-colonialism. Today, I'm going to talk about the Korean culture and its relationship with the democracy in terms of the time horizons, about 20 to 30 years of the changes of Korean society and the relationship of those two aspects. We are going to take a deeper dive on this topic, so-called the K, letter K, the pops and drama in the pop culture, widely accepted by the people on the current culture. And through that lens, how do we understand the changes that are taking place in Korean society? Let me share my presentation. This page, the various images, drama and movies, posters, and in Japan, the K-pop artists are also popular in Japan as well. The audience who are with us in this session, you probably have a good idea of who they are and what they do. And it's really surprising because, as you know, speaking of the Korea about 70 years ago, 1945, post World War II, right after the World War II, and in 1950s, Korean War, the Korean Peninsula War has taken place, and we started as a poorest nation in the world. That's where we were as a state. And after that, for many years, military regime and also the autocracy, the liberalism and the democracy was heavily oppressed in the society. So it was led by the political administration to develop the nation. And we see the quantitative growth as a nation, but recently we started to see the globally recognized and popular pop culture contents have been produced, and it's sent out to the world. And image of of Korea as a state has transformed significantly. That's what we have experienced in past 10 years. The Korean people and also the people in the other parts of the world also have witnessed it. The series of this evolution and development in terms of social changes and also the atmospheric change and political initiatives changes. First, so-called K-culture, we understand the time in 2010 and after, the pop culture originated in Korea, which gained a greater global presence. And also various awards like Academy Awards, Golden Globe Awards, and in Europe, Cannes Movie Festival Award, and in music, Billboard chart. The K-pop music are ranked among the top in the billboards. And in Asia and also South America and also including North America and Europe, the daily contents as contents for the consumption. The K culture has gained the popular recognition. So the K culture has become the popular content for the people's consumption. In the background, in past 20 or 30 years, the changes in Korean society, there are the factors for the rise of K-culture. And in the meantime, what has happened? The Korean society also have changed. In 1997, the change of the administration, political administration, and later I will come back to this point. For many years, the military regime has continued, and after that, democratization movement was led by political force, political power, and that took over the regime. And as through the leadership of the political leadership, the economically it has collapsed from various reasons. So democratization of the politics and also the change of a paradigm of the economy occurred in the late 1990s in a Korean society. That has significantly transformed the society. And looking at the keywords, democratization, new liberalism, and then after that, severe disparities in the society and a transformation of an industrial paradigm.
で、こういった流れの中で文化産業への目覚めという形で韓国社会では
So as the awakening toward the cultural industry
Korean
それ
society
はソフ
started
ト
to
パ
think
ワーを
about
戦場能力
entertainment
と
as
し
an
て
industry.
国の体
So
制
by
というか
using
その
soft
国の
power
体
as
質とい
the
うか
power to
そういうことを変化させるというドライブが
growth,
この時期から非常に強くなっています。
it was used
で、
as
そ
the
れま
drive
で、
to
政
change
治
the
の側、
country.
国の側
Until
で
then,
慣習文化もしくは
the
ジャーナリズム
government
なんかに非常
or
に
the
強
politic
く規制をかけていた検
in the
閲
political
な
world,
どの緩
there
和、
was a strong
そしてエン
censorship.
ターテインメ
However,
ント
it
産
was
業の強
relaxed
力
at
拡
this
大、
time. And
そ
also
れから
there was
情報コ
the
ミュニケーション
expansion
の
of
イ
the
ンフラ拡充、
investment into
そし
entertainment
てそうい
industry
う土台を
and
に根ざした
improvement
メ
of
ディアの変容ということ
infrastructure
を
such as
この90年
information
代
and
後半から2000
communication.
年代の前半まで
Then,
韓国
in
社会で非
parallel,
常にドラ
there
スティッ
was
クに
the change
経
of
験してきてい
media
るわ
as
けです。
well. This
で
is
もちろん
what the
皆さん
Korean
よくご存知だ
society
と思い
has
ますけれども、
experienced
韓
in a
国のインター
drastic
ネットと
manner.
いうのはもう
And as you may
こ
know,
こ20年ぐらいの
in the past
経つ中
20
で
years,
世界で一番拡張され
Korean
たネットワークを
internet
もう
is
ハードウェア的に
one of the most
持ってます
expanded
し、で
network in
そ
the
ういう
world.
インフ
That
ラ
is
の
what we
形
have
で
as an
今
hardware.
もう
And
その
based
メ
on
ディ
that
アの
infrastructure,
メディアをこう体験し、メディアをこうエンジョイする、そうい
for
う形っていうのはもう20年前とはガラッと変わって
the way to
ほとんど韓
experience
国
and
では地上
enjoy
波
the
テレビで
media
すから、
has
あんまりリアルタイ
completely
ム的な
changed from the
世界
20
動
years
員、
ago.
あとテレビ
So
が
there is the
もう
real-time
大画面のテレビ
broadcasting
を
and
若
also
い世代
the
はあんまり見ない。
um,
そう
the
いうふうなドラスティックなメディアの変容なんかを
online,
非
the
常に目に
broadcasting,
つ
and
け
the
るところで
actually the
す。
younger generations really do
で
not
こうい
watch
った流れ、
TV
こうい
on
っ
the
た変
huge
化というも
screen.
の
That
が
is
韓
another
国のこの
change.
K カルチャーの、
And
非常に
this
物質的
change
な土台となって、そういうふ
became
う
the
な
foundation
流れ
of
が
K
出て
culture.
きたと。で、実はこういうふうなK カルチャーの、発展なり、
So
い
this
ろい
type
ろ
of
とこう、
development
世
of K
界に
culture
誇れるなんとかなんとかとかいう、こういう言説が
when
それに伴って韓国社会で
the
は非常に
society
こ
says this
う
is what we can
支配
proud of
的
to the
な
world.
んですけれども、
This
今日はですね、
that
僕
became the dominant
の
perception.
話はこういった
However,
流れにちょっと違和感を持っ
what
ている
I
と
am
いうとこ
going
ろか
to
ら始め
say
たいと
is
思います。
actually
で
starting
何かこう
from
韓国すごいとか、こう
the
いうふうな議論が、こういうような雰囲気が
sense of
韓国社会の中で
discomfort
は K
toward
カ
this
ルチャー
kind
を
of
通して非常にこう盛り上がっている
atmosphere.
わけですけれど
So
も、
the Korean
果たしてそ
society
んな
is
に
great.
いい
That
こ
is
とな
the
のか、
what people
価
would
値判
say
断
as
でき
through
る
the
のではな
lens
く
of
て、
K culture.
こういう
However,
流れっ
my
ていうもの
starting
を
point
ただ手放
is
しに喜
is
んでる
this
だけでいいのか。
really
で何かこうい
something
うこのような
we
変化の中から
should
出
be
てきた
happy
この K
about
カルチャーというものの輝
for
かし
no
いな
reason?
んか成
And
功っていうものを
this a glorious
もうちょっ
success
と
we
違っ
have
た角度からもうちょっと
is
批判的に捉えて
probably
みていただき
something
た
we
い
can
というふう
and
に、
we should
僕
revisit
は個
from
人的には思います。
a critical
今日
point
は
of
その
view. That
話
is my
を、
personal
韓
perspective.
国の民主主義をどう理
Today,
解するのかということとつなげ
I
て、
am going to
お話し
connect
さ
that
せていただきたい
story
と思います。
with the
で、スライド
interpretation
の、
of
下
a
なんですけ
Korean
れども、ちょっと
democracy.
前のスライドに戻ってくだ
And
さい。
as you can see at the bottom of the
この写
slide,
真
if you
は
go
ち
back
ょ
to
う
the
ど K カ
previous
ルチャーというのがグ
slide,
ローバルな人気を博す前にドメスティッ
before
クなレ
K
ベルで
culture
非常に
became
人気のあっ
popular
た
around the world,
歌手です。
there were
で、
these
みんな非
artists
常にこう
who
柄悪い
were
ですよね、
popular
彼らは。
in South Korea. As you
本
can
当に
see, they
実
look
際に
like
柄の
bad
悪い連
boys.
中だった。
And
日本でいう
actually, they
いわ
were
ゆる
bad
不
boys.
良とかヤンキーだったわけです。で実
They
際
were
一番
so-called bad boys.
見られ
And
ると画面の左にいる2人組なんかは個人的
on
な
the
話ですけ
left,
ど僕の高校の同期です。
personally,
で
actually,
彼らは僕を知らないんですけ
they
れども、
were
僕は
my
彼らは有名人
classmates
だったの
at
でよく知っ
high
てました。
school.
同
They
じ
don't know
同い
me,
年
but I knew
有
them
名
because
な
they were
まあ
famous
不良
and
ですね、いわゆ
they
る
were
ピ
famous
ンクマフィアです。
bad boys
で他
in
のまあ
the
その
same
時期のも
age
ちろ
and
ん
they were
ファッ
always
ションと
fighting
か
on
そ
the
の
street and such.
なんというかこうトレンドっていうのもここに反映されてるわけですけれども、
And
し
the
かし
trend
彼
of
ら
the
はもう地
fashion
味
were
にヤ
reflected
ンキーの血
as
の
well.
そういう連中だっ
However,
たわけです。
they
次のス
were
ライド。
bad boys from the bottom of their hearts.
で、実は2000年代以前のエンターテインメント産業というの
Before
は
2000,
本当に
The entertainment industry was the time where we had many former bad boys. They were people who didn't go to school, who were not interested in being educated at school. So they were out of the kind of world and they enjoyed dancing, playing, and singing by themselves. They were more like underground people, and the entertainment industry picked them up. That was how entertainment industry was shaped in Korea before 2000.
で、こういうふうなエンターテインメント産業は非常にブラックな
And
労
this
働条
kind
件
of
をもちろん
entertainment industry had
非
a
常に先制
very
的な構
bad
造ですね。
labor
そして、
condition.
まあ
It
そこに
was
は
it
多
had
く
a
の巨大世界
tyrannical structure
暴力
as
組
well,
織も介入してい
and
る。
there was
で、
the
そうい
involvement of
そういった
violent organizations.
構造ですので、
That
連帯
was
主
the
体として
structure we
芸能
had.
産業というのがあり方としてあったと。要するにそ
So
こは
the
ま
entertainment
あ、
industry
一
was a
般の
kind of
日常の
exceptional
何か規
zone,
範だとか取り決まりだと
mean
か
that
そう
the
いう約束
that
だ
was
こと
the
だとか
area
そういうことが
where
そことは
the
もうあまり成り立た
regular
ないそう
or
いうふうな世界だっ
the
たわけ
the
です。
regular norms of the
で、こうい
societies
う
were
産
not
業のあり
applied.
方が2000年
So
代
this
中盤
industrial
後半以降に
structure
なると2000年代に入ると多くのプロ
from
ダクションのオーディ
the
ションを通して、
2000
いわゆる正規のリクルートによって
through
練習生
the
を取る。
audition of
そして
the
そうやって取られた練習生たちが非
huge
常に具体
entertainment
的な育成
production
の
as they
対象
try
になってその
to
プログラムをこなしていく。そし
hire
てそれと同時
trainees
に、
who
歌と
were
踊りだ
trained
けを
in a
教えるのではなく
systematic
て、徹
manner.
底的な規範と
And
いうか、
rather
教
than
育
just
っていうことを
teaching
するわけ
singing
です。
and dancing, they also
学校に
taught
も行かせ、そし
disciplines
て
to
大衆
trainees.
文化の
They
担い
sent
手としてどの
trainees
よ
to
う
the
な
schools, and
身の振り方だと
they
か
were the
喋り方だとか
evangelists
い
of
ろ
the
ん
pop
な
culture.
そ
So
の規
they
範をする
taught
ということをやってい
how
ます。
trainees
そし
should
て非常にクリーンな模範
speak
的
in
な人
front
格
of
者と
people
し
and
て
such.
今
As a
のエンターテ
result,
インメントのアイドルだとか俳
trainees
優さんである
became
とかそういう
a
ものを
model
認められるし
personality.
もう育成
That
の段
is
階で
what
そう
is
いうふうな教
required
育を受けてい
for
るわ
the
けです。
current
だから
Korean
2000
idols
年
because
代
they were
の
trained
前
and
半あたり
educated in that
境
way.
目として韓
So
国のエン
from
タ
the
ー産
beginning of
業のアクター
2000,
たちは全
the
く違った
main actors of a
パーソナ
Korean
リティを持った
entertainment
そういう
industry
人たちが
started to
働
have
く
a
わけです。
completely different
じゃあ
personalities.
このような変化っていうものを
This kind
我
of
々が踏まえた
change
ときに現代韓国の美術
is
史というものを理解するそういう手がかりをこういう変化の中で探せ
a
るのではない
clue
か
to
ということが
understand the Korean, the
今日の
democracy.
話のテー
So
マです。
my theme is
次に
to
お願いしま
find a
す。
clue in the entertainment industry to
こ
understand
ういう変化を理
the
解するためには
the
まず我
Korean
々は文化立国という転換点を理
democracy.
解する必要があります。
In order to do so,
文化
first
立
of all,
国
we
と
have
い
to
う言葉
understand the
は
establishment
実
of
は先ほど申し上げた
cultural-oriented
その
nation as a
1997
turning
年の
point.
キム・デジュン大統領の
As I
選挙大
mentioned,
統領選での勝利
in
その後に始まる
1997,
キム・デジ
Kim
ュン
Dae-jun
政権
won
の、
the presidential
政策を
election.
ドライブで付
Then,
けられた名前です。
since
このキ
then,
ム・デジュンという人
the
は、ご
policies
存知の
of
方も多い
Kim
かもしれ
Dae-jun
ませ
was
んけれど
called
も、その60年から、
cultural-oriented
80
nation.
年代
And
後半
as
ま
you
で
may know,
韓国
from
社会を支配していた独裁政権の
60s to
最も象徴的な
80s,
理性
there
者
was the
であるわけです。
development
彼は
dictatorship,
60年
and
代
the Kim
ま
Dae-jun
あ、初
was
め
the
に政治家とし
representative
て議会
victim
に
of that
登場
regime.
して
In the
その後
beginning of
一貫し
60s,
てそ
he
の軍事独裁政権
appeared
と
in the
対立関
political
係を
world
非
as
常
the
に
congressman,
鋭
and
く
he
持って
always had
持
a
続して
very
そして独
severe
裁政権の弾圧の対象になってきた政治家なんです。
confrontation and conflict
で、その
between the
彼
regime.
が軍事政権以降における
And
初の
after
政権交
development
代の担い手として
dictatorship,
大統領になると
Kim
いう
Dae-jun
こうい
was
う
the
象徴
first
的な、
president
まあ、
to
事件というか
lead
出
the
来事
new
で、
regime.
それは
That was the
1997
very
年でした。で、
significant
そうして
event happened in
大統領になっ
1997.
たキム・デジュン
And Kim Dae-jun became the
は
president.
やっぱりそれまで自由民主主義というものが非常に抑圧されてい
So
た韓国社会の中
before
で
the
民
time,
主主義と自由というものを自分の政治指導者に
democracy
最
and
も中心
freedom
に置いて
were
いた政治家
suppressed
が
in
大
South
統領にな
Korea.
る。
However,
じゃあ
Kim
そうすると
Dae-jun
韓
is
国
the
社会は
one
どう変わ
who
るのか
put
というそう
freedom
いう
and democracy at the center. And
彼に
with
とっての一つの
that
任務
kind of a
があった
president,
わけです。
how a
それは
Korean
彼のまあ
society
大
would
統領とし
change.
ての存在理由
That
で
was
もありま
the
した。
one of the significance
で、
we
彼
had
は
Kim
どういうふう
Dae-jun
なじゃ
as
あ
the
方向性を
president
示す
of
のかという
Korea,
と、
and what
軍
kind
事
of a
独裁と開
direction
発
he
経
had.
済から
So there was
民
the
主主義と
military regime
ソフ
and
ト
the
パワー産
development
業への
dictatorship. So
戦略
from
的大転換の
that,
方向を示すことにな
he
ります。
he had a drastic change toward soft power industry and democracy. So as you may know, when we think about military dictatorship, from political war to the everyday life, everything was controlled. And with democratic governance and with the multiple elements of liberalism, he fostered the culture.
In economy, the heavy and chemical industry has been the single focus, and as a following capitalism nation to the advanced nation. So the Korea was developing the subcontractor industry from the advanced nations. That was the economy before, but Kim Dae-jin said that it's no longer viable as an economy in going forward. Of course, it's not that the nation will terminate the heavy chemical industry, but a type of industry that Korea can lead in the global arena in going forward, which was IT industry and a cultural industry. So later named as a K culture, that type of a cultural industry. So he drastically steered the direction of the state. So in a comprehensive manner, we understand that is really the scheme of a culture-oriented nation. In the tide of the culture-oriented nation, the question is the 30 years of military regime, very severe oppression and governing, and also the colonial occupations before that. And consistently, what was maintained was the structure of the control of a Japanese empire, and in a diverse level through the political regime, many people were victimized, and their trauma and the damages, how it can be compensated. And in a communal level, those damages can be healed. So in this blow, that became the question. And then Kim Dae-jin put the slogan of the settlement and reconciliation. So the settlement of those tragedy to be led by the government, because the country is democratized, and now we are going to build a liberal country. But those unfortunate events, of course, we need to clarify the facts after the fact. But retaliation in a political retaliation or the personal retaliation need to be mitigated or minimized by the framework of the reconciliation and the settlement and the compensation. And after the colonialism, there is a severe conflict such as what we see in Africa or genocide. So it is very much the view or the perspective of a response to the history as a cultural-oriented nation. So in these background, so the legitimacy of the administration is not to be pursued in a history or the political movement, but it is pursued in a culture in a wide context. So that's how we interpret this word. By the Kim Dae-jin administration, it was driven as the attitude of the democracy. But this direction it is included, another direction was included in democratization, and that was being forgotten in terms of a function. So that type of direction was also included in this movement. This democratization movement, in our understanding, how the modern democracy is, as a system is established and then governed and secure the safety and the security of the people. That's really the image of our understanding when we talk about the democracy. But a country like Korea experiencing colonialism and in a Cold War, it was very severe division occurred and daily life was strictly controlled. This democratic movement, how the system to be established, that is one question. And the other question is also the anti-colonialism and also post-Cold War. That was another issue the country faced. The division of the Korean Peninsula and the control and the division of the colonial occupation to be seen as one of the continued regime. And it is not only the institutional democracy establishment, but also the popular level, on the mass level, or the response to trauma, to the damages. There are degree of mild or severe, but as a community, there is a trauma that's a damage by the autocracy. How communally we are going to heal this? That was also another issue. So the state violence by the control regime with the legitimacy. And Kim Dae-jung was a symbol of the damage. And why he won the election is to heal those damages. That was a context Kim Dae-jung had. Therefore, the democratization movement, it was the healing, act of healing of the mass level PTSD, and Kim Dae-jung's election was its symbolic node. In this context, through the reconciliation and forgiveness, that was that trauma to be mended. And what happened to the democracy afterwards? So the legitimacy was pursued in a culture, and he wanted to transform the Korean society to the social space, clean social space, led by soft and clean citizens. So how this mass level PTSD was handled? Now, theoretical or the abstract point I would like to make, in order for us to understand the question, the freedom, how we understand the freedom, that is really the question we need to address. So far, from the modern Western spirit of freedom, we have been familiarized ourselves. So primarily, it's really about the personal freedom. That is really the image we have as a common sense. However, in a democratization movement, the so-called freedom, so constitutional or guaranteed personal freedom, that is not only the freedom, but it's a suffocating, oppressed control. In that control, somewhere like an asylum, we would like to create as a communal space. That was another freedom. For example, in the Korean society, when I was in a high school, the physical punishment was very common. So it was very violent control structure was already existed in my high school days, and the students had or sought after some kind of asylum, like back alleys, like smoking in the back alleys. So that was voluntarily manner in a way, but somewhere that to hide ourselves from the authority. And in a school life, so it was it may be seen as a deviation or deviators, but in looking at the comprehensive society, if we did not have those asylum, students at the time wouldn't survive.
And when we look at the political movement in the democratization of Korea, it was surely led by a famous leader like Kim Dae-jun. However, there were many asylums or asile which supported the movement. For instance, the night schools for laborers or for university students, there were student circles, or it could be drinking places in the local areas. In these kind of asylums, people try to escape from the control of dictatorship. So they have created asylum by themselves. So this kind of communal freedom or liberty were created under the democratization. And I talked about culture-oriented nation, which destroyed all the kind of asylums. In simple terms, there were diverse and different asylums from different origins, and by getting rid of asylums, homogeneous spaces were created. Let's say the old city districts were gentrified into new cities. That was done under the name of democracy. When you compare the Seoul, city of Seoul, 20 or 30 years back and the current city, it's completely different. So it's even older ones, but this is what was normal when I was a child. And until mid 80s or 90s, this was something familiar in the back streets of Seoul. And the cities were vibrant, and back alleys or back streets were vibrant. However, when you visit Korea, not only Seoul, but the big cities of Korea, this is what you see. Many tall buildings. And if you try to find the back streets, for instance, when you travel to Korea, it's very difficult to find these kind of sceneries. Instead, there are beautifully made tall buildings, usually in uniform shape. This is what you encounter in the current Korea. So talking about the gentrification of cities, there's the change of a massive housing complex, and the uniqueness of hometown was lost, and the back street is distracted. So the companion consciousness was coming from the fact that we lived in the same the housing complex. It was not coming from the history or origin, and the meaning that there was the strong resistance for
人々に
anything
問われています。
outside of the
で、今
housing
韓国では
complex.
この団地のセキュリティを徹底的にして、
And in
他の
Korea,
他のこと、
now
例
the
えば
security of
団地ご
housing
とに処罰を出
complex
すわけではないから、いろん
is
な団地からこう
becoming
少々
more
が来て、
strict.
で、友達の団地に遊びに行こうとするときに、
For
他の団
instance,
地の子は
if
ここ
you
の遊び場で遊べないとか、
go to elementary
そういう
schools, there are many kids
もう
coming
本
from
当
a
になんか
different
こう信
housing
じられない
complex.
関
However,
係
if
が日常的に
you
展
are
開さ
coming
れてい
from a
ます。
different housing
で、
complex,
これは
you
よ
are
り
not
衛
allowed
生
to
的でよ
enter
り禁止
that
的な空
housing
間をその中
complex.
でどんどん追求していく。
So
我
this
々
is
と同
about the
じ
pursuit
同類
of
の人間っていうの
more
はこの団地に住んでいる
clean and
そしてこの団地と同じような団地に
homogeneous
住んでいる人
space.
という
So
ふう
if
に
you live in a certain housing
同
complex,
類への意識が変容していくわけです。
then your
で、こ
companion
うした抽象
consciousness
化された
coming
金
from the
銭
fact
へ
that
のこだわりが
someone
抽象化
is
された
living
第
at the
一
same
質への脅
housing
迫的な
complex.
恐怖もしくは排除として
So
取り引
there
き
is
していく
the
こ
strong
ういうことが今の
consciousness
韓国社
toward
会の中で
abstract
展開されている。
homogeneity,
非常
and
になんていう
then
か僕としては
there's
恐ろ
the
しい
obsessive fear and the exclusion
ベクトルだと思い
toward
ます。
abstract externality. So
で、
this is
開かれた平等な
something
空
I'd
間という
say
色彩の
very
理念ですね。みんな同じ資
scary.
格を持って、
And
同じ相
the
対で
the
平等で、 み
idea
んな同
of
じ
the
自由で
modern times is
エンジョイ
coming
できる
from
という、
the
こう
open
いう
and
理念
equal
はここにおい
space
て
which everyone
強固
can
な背景
enjoy
に
in
基
the
づい
same
た
level
非
of
常に抽
freedom.
象的で理
However,
念的な金銭
now
の追求
based
を
on the
様変わり
strong
していくわ
exclusion,
け
it
で
is
す。
now changed to the
で、
pursuit of
僕はこういうふう
conceptual
な民主化
homogeneity.
運動以降のその
So
後の
after the
民主主義のあり方
democratization
っていう
movement,
ものに非常に問
and
題がある
also
と
with the
感じていま
democracy
す。
after
で、それ
that,
は何かっていうと、やっぱ
there
り先ほど
were
申し上げた
there are
内省
many
民主主義とい
challenges.
うこと、アジールと民主主義というこ
The
とですけ
first
れ
of
ど
all,
も、やっ
there's
ぱり民主
the
化っていうのは
idea
もう
of
一回反復しになりますけれ
asylum
ども、
and
個人の
freedom.
権利、自
So
由、平
again,
等への熱望だけでなくて、
democratization
多
is
様な
not
非難
just
主張
about
を
the
いかに作
aspiration
り上
for
げ、それ
individual
をそれを維持してい
liberty,
く。その
freedom,
中
and
で、
equality,
そ
but
の
it's
空間
also
に
about the
おける自由
protection
というも
of
のを我
various
々が
asylum
付与して
so
いく
that
ということが非
we
常に重
can
要だと思
secure
うんで
the
すけれども、
freedom under
衛生と
them.
安楽への欲望
However, now
とともに、
there's the aspiration
不
for
安、トラウ
cleanness
マと
and
共同的な自由
easiness,
と多様な性、
and
経験、
based
能
on
力が
the
能力を尊重で
healing
きる、
of
そういう
common
連邦が
trauma
もうことごとく破壊さ
and
れて
the
いるという
respect
こと
of
を、
the
で、こうなると、均質、
and the
衛
respect
生、
of
安楽とい
the
うものが一
the
人
the
歩きし
various
て、まあ、
experience
地
that was
元
all
のもう共同の経
destroyed.
験、そして
So
トラウ
now
マ、そしてある種のその逸
homogeneity,
話、
cleanness, and
まあ、
easiness
地元に
comes
そこそ
first,
こ
and
共有
the
される逸話に
asylum
対
of
して、
a
記
memory
憶的
based
なそ
on
の
a
夢的な、
hometown
こういうも
experience,
のが喪失
trauma,
され
and
ていくわ
legends
けです。
were lost.
で、こういった社会雰囲気の中で、
So
日
with
本で
this
もよく
kind of
報道され
social
る、まあ、韓
atmosphere,
国のニューシーンです
as
よね。
it's
ああいうのを見
often
ると、
covered by
過剰な
Japanese
競争、
media,
ね、入
there's
試も
the
そうだし、就職もそうだし、バイ
excessive
トも
competition
家
for
を買う転職競争
university
なわけで、
entrance
もうず
exam
っ
and
と一
also
生競争にさらされるわけです。なぜかっていう
job
と、
hunting and
均質
also
な社会で、その一員にならないといけない。
buying the house as well because it's the
ま
homogeneous
あ、
society
ちょっ
and
と
you are
個人的な経験も言います
required to
と、
be the number one in the
例えば僕
society.
が大学
Let
教
me
えている
share
時
with
に、
you my
やっぱり
personal
学生
story.
さんたち
So
が
when
非
I
常に
teach
こ
at the
う違
university,
和感を持っているのは、
I sometimes
授業
find the
にす
sense
ご
of
い出てくるんで
weirdness
すよ。
toward my students.
まあ、先
They
生として
always
言って
come
はい
to
けない
my
ことですけ
class.
ども、
So
僕
probably
の
I
学
shouldn't
生の
say
時は
this
あん
as
ま
a
り授業出なか
professor.
ったんですよ。
However, when I was a
みんな
student,
大学のどっか
we
のサークル
really
に
didn't go
来
to
られて、まあ、
classes because we gathered
こう、
at
ま
some
あ、
other
のんびりし
places
た時間を過ごし
on
たり、
campus
まあ、ある
with
種
a
は
circle members.
何かこう激
We
烈な
hang
ディスカッ
out
ションを
with
したりと
them
か、
and
まあ、ある
sometimes we
時
had
に
a
は
very
そう
passionate
してはならないこ
discussions,
とですけれども、
or
お酒を飲ん
it's
だりとか、
not appropriate, but
そう
we
いうことを
even
非常
got
にそういうこ
drunk
とで成
on
り立っていた大
campus.
学社会だったんです
So
が、
that
あ
was
ま
the
り先生が多分授業に出てこいと
university
か言
experience
わな
we
い、
had.
そこで成り立っていた大学
We
社会
really
が
didn't
今の
pay
学
attention
生さん
to
たち
go
は
to
本当に
classes. basis. However, now the current students are very the serious to attending classes. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm interested in how to interpret the situation. So after a severe competition to get into university, still they are exposed to a very severe competition on campus. And even they get out of the university, they are also exposed to the serious competition in the job world. And that is reflected as a numerical figure, such as the lowest birth ratio in the history. And I was saying that the entertainment industry were led by former bad boys, and now it became very clean and very polite, the idols of who are leading the K culture. This kind of a change is probably the reflection of the change of the society.
This is my last page. Well, I would like to quickly provide a conclusion. Probably in the changes of the situation, looking at the changes of the society and the culture, how we take the diversity as my question as a researcher and also as also one of the citizen in the society. I often ask this question to myself. The global popularity of K culture, in my sense, it's really the symbol of the homogeneity of the world. It's not really the frenzy for the diversity, but it's rather a discolored uh, uh, technological form, and it's a sense of safety that gives us. So colonialism experience. So it's like the sort of military exercises and so forth. Things that are going through those technological production. This type of the sense of safety really is one of the factor of the great success of K culture in the world. On the other hand, looking at drama and movies, the colonialism experience and the division of the economy and rich and poor, and also the south and north divisions are put into a theme of those works, like a suspense, action, and revenge and love affairs. But overall, the latter form is just taken its form, and the former is just provide a context as the topic. So the current nationalism, it was more about the trauma, rooted in the trauma and the history, and it was politicized as a character. But current nationalism, the form of the technology and also the sophisticated representation format. That's really the reason of the growth of the current nationalism. And then the legitimacy was pursued in the cultural-oriented nation, which is to discolor the history and trauma and politics, and then Korean culture transformed to the society which pursue the hollow cleanliness, and also wiping out diversity, which was really more worked functioned as an asylum or as jail. What we need to question is it's not really the revival, but asylum type of the diversity. How can we ensure a functionality of the asylum? Speaking of asylum, it may sound very disparate, but in Japanese language, I think you use the word nigeba or place to get out, a place to hide. How can we secure the place to hide? So the place to hide, it's cultural and historical political context. We need to ask this question again. That's how we can recapture democracy. So I put a little words, but I don't want to go into a complicated narrative, so I would like to move to Q&A. One thing that I'm paying attention, it's trivial. Well, not really trivial, but it's widespread phenomenon in Japan. It is seen as well, but what's popular in Korea is used item tradings online. This is about what used to be used. And in the past, you don't know what to do with what you have been using. You are emotionally attached to it. You don't want to throw it away. You don't know what to do. And you put it online and then put the item on the second-hand trading. It's actually showing something different from the current society, which is the current society is advanced capitalism and the relationship of goods and people. It is reduced to money, meaning what you project to an item like a love and a value and a passion, everything need to be translated in monetary value. So your attachment and the value of use and emotion, you don't really share that with others. But second-hand item trading, looking at the past, and people say that I have been cherishing this item very much, so please cherish it. I read those comments often. So in isolated world, in a communal sense, the relationship of a person and goods are spreading in an online world. So by algorithm, your taste is analyzed, but it is very different in terms of the emotion that you take from those algorithms. So the asylum or agio is not just a person to person, but it is also the relationship of person and goods and person and environment. So it's really the freedom as a network that we can create as a possibility. And Korean democracy and Japanese democracy are in the state that are not much different. And considering these aspects, not just two country, but also bilateral relationship, it will give us a different imagination. And it gives us a clue for different type of imagination. That is all for my lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Ishii, please. Yes, thank you. Well, I'll address you, Mr. Kim Han, because I don't want you to I don't want to call you as a Professor Kim, but you started your research as security in a post-democracy. The issue of security was the focus of your publication. It was very ambitious work, and in a secure environment, the sense of protection. So ambivalence, ambiguity is really the assumption to ensure the democracy, but actually people in a way, having a clean life, but it's very strictly oppressed. That was your theory. And today, Japanese post-war regime is also a part of it. But you've now shifted your focus on the Korean pop culture, and you are reiterating the issue of security, and you are seeking the new direction, which I really deeply appreciate. First, I would like to say is what you have just delivered. It's not just a Korean issue of Korea. And you also elaborated that it's really the universal democracy as a question, at least in East Asia. Democracy is something that you are addressing. So there is a perspective of a universalism, and also regional, not just limited to state. And I myself is studying Korea, so I could relate to that.
And what I'm going to say is more like a comment, not a question. So I would like to hear more from you, and there are some questions from the audience as well. So let me give you a comment. Before 1997, what was the process in South Korea? When I think about it, from the late 80s, democratization started to take place in Korea. And when I think about it, after 80s, that was the similar kind of democratization in Taiwan and China. So the Asian countries outside of Japan, and that there was a Reaganomics in the States and the Thatcherism in the UK. These are going in parallel. So when we think about the democratization in East Asia, it was done under the neoliberal movement. And when we think about the current democracy in East Asia, that the characteristic gave us the certainty, the election. So that is one point. So when I look at the democratization in Korea, there's the problem with the neoliberalism, which needs to be reevaluated. And today's lecture was focused on a culture-oriented nation after the administration of Kim Dae-jun, and there's the K culture, which is not limited to Korea, but to East Asia and also globally, and this is now highly evaluated. So another point is how to interpret this phenomenon. So there's limitation and also possibilities I see, and this is very interesting for me as well. And I am trying to find appropriate terminology to describe this phenomena. So probably from 2016. So that was the time of Park Geun-hye, and also we had Moon Jae-in as the president. Then we entered the pandemic era, and now it's in the different phase. However, from around the time in Japan, that was the time that the Japanese people felt the admiration to a Korean society. So there was the movement after Seoul incident, and also the Me Too movement, and there was the novel which sold very well in Japan as well. So that was the about the generation who participate in the feminism and also the democratic movement. And that is how many Japanese people interpreted the Korean movement as well. And there were many things happened in Japan as well. There were the part of the movement related to Me Too movement as well. And there were times that the Japanese people had the admirations to Korean society. And I think the popularity of a K culture was going on in parallels. And it looks like now the Japanese people acquired a richer understanding about the Korean culture. However, when you talked about various syndromes of Korea and your diagnosis about it is that the now democracy wants to have a cleanness. I think this is ambiguity coming from Kim Dae-jun. And in your lecture, you pointed out the problematic aspect of it. That's the admiration toward a Korean democracy, and by keeping its ambiguity, it became popular in Japan as well, which is very interesting phenomena happening. And regarding your last point, there's a transaction of a second-hand item. So with the matured democracy, there's the possibility that the asylums are taken away. However, in the democratic society with the current form, there is another possibility towards the diverse asylum with the idea of the transaction of the second-hand item. So actually, this kind of the transaction of second-hand item is happening in Japan as well, and there's the admiration for Showa culture as well. And in China, there's the movement that the people do not want to participate in competition, and as it's happening in Korea and Japan, these people are now supporting subculture in the internet space. They are trying to secure their asylums. However, asylums for them are now not in the physical space under the very rough the regime, and they're trying to find the asylum in the virtual space. And with the technology, it is now taken into the process of the current development of the capitalism. So that is what is going on, at least in East Asia in a common manner. So this is a phenomena, I would say. So if you can elaborate on these points, that would be great. And another point I'd like to mention is a topic related to technology. So regarding the technology of the China, the economic, the professor like Ajitani-san saying that with the technology, there's a new things being born. So with the power of the technology, so there are people observing or supervising each other, and the society becomes less violent. And fortunately or unfortunately, during the pandemic, we were confined into our own houses, and with the technology, we are now realizing a cleaner world. But this is very different from asylum. However, still, there were certain positive aspects as well. So again, there is ambiguity. So how technology would function in the future? So with the dissemination of technology, probably we will be able to have a cleaner, more convenient society with the detailed the attention to service. However, with the censorship and the data control, we are going to lose a certain aspects as well. I think that is the current direction we're going on. However, under such circumstances, are we still able to have asylum? I think it's necessary to have asylum. Then, if that is the case, where is the place we can have asylum? That is what we all have to think about. And one thing that came up in my mind is the current way of cultural consumption. So for those who are consuming cultures, I think it's the salvation in a sense. So for instance, they tend to be rogues. They were smoking, or that they were trying to be bad boys or bad girls. However, now the places they can be these kind of the people are lost. And for Korean young people who are consuming the cultures, I think they are unhealthy in some sense, and the reason why they're having extreme consumption. So when we look at the consumption of K culture, probably it's same for the Japanese young generation. However, I think in some sense they are trying to find a salvation.
So that is really the extreme tragedy of how the K culture is consumed. There were a strong criticism against the young people who gather to that area. And the current technology and the new liberalism is the driver of the current Korean culture, and their own protest has been included unconsciously. That's what I feel. I want to go into further on this point, but time is limited. So in Japan, the entertainment world, like Johnny's and Associates world, and that issue was not attended in the past. People who consumed Johnny's contents, they were aware of those issues incorporated with the Johnny's and Associate, but they ignored. And it's not the punishment will not solve this problem. Politically or the legally, or as with the attitude of a democracy, we may decide to punish, and then if we punish it, it may go further, deeper in the bottom. That's what I am fearing, and I would appreciate the suggestion by Kim Han-sang. Thank you. Professor Kim, do you want to respond to Dr. Ishii? Well, in all context, I think he shares the same direction in every sense. Well, with the time is limited, so I may react very quickly. The democratization of Eastern Asia, Taiwan and Hong Kong and Korea, the global neo-liberalistic context that nations have developed. And speaking of democratization, the paradigm rooted in each state or the research is conducted focusing on a communal sense in the phase of the new liberalism, democratization was not getting enough attention. And modernization of Japan in 19th century, it also relates to that point. And at that time, from the paradigm, Western paradigm of politics and capitalism, that really makes a difference of the transformation of the society. And that's how we need to reinterpret what has happened in late 1980s. That is my particular attention in my research. And those are the concrete topics of my research. And in going forward, I would like to engage dialogue with the professors on that. And the next point is a very important insight. The light, even if it's a candlelight, that casted a great impact to global arena. And I was with my colleagues who weren't aware of those. The administration or the regime has shifted or was changed in a violent manner. And I think I feel very strange or unnatural, or that those violent shift took place legitimately, and frenzy for the capitalism was very strong, and at the same time, at the rallies and the demonstration was occupied by the pursuit to a clean and a safe society. So it's really the capitalism and the new liberalism were mixed in the same spot, same place, and then the excitement bursted. And president at the time, his misconduct, it was an invasion to capitalism, and in such a clean society, he stained the clean society. That was also the sensation, the candle demonstration, the burst of the capitalism. And after that, the administration was established. So it's not really the same thing. But those paradigm doesn't go away. It's evolving and continued. It's a new liberalistic. I don't really want to use a word of a new liberalism, but a clean society, pursuit to clean society, it's very obsessive in pursuing. And how we take that is another question. And on the same context, that Me Too and the feminism movement, the burst of those movements, it is the very strong reaction to the new liberalism. And as a backlash, it is going to a very complex situation. And that's also in the paradigm development of the paradigm. It's really the evidence of the pursuit to the clean society. And another aspect is technology. So when the technology is at the forefront, the physical asylum, physical agile is reduced. How can we find liberty in that situation? due to the time constraint, I cannot go into much detail, but as you've just said, I think people are doing various things, similar things. Otherwise, we are exposed to such an intense competition, and if we take a step back, it is difficult to survive. If you're in the competition, it's difficult to live. And if you step out of the competition, it is difficult to live again as well. So in a various form, something like a asile or asylum is sought after. I think people are taking actions for the asylum. So how we as researchers observe and then conceptualize or collect those observations, and then in a language, how can we put into language as a possibility? Those behaviors itself have a possibility or not a possibility, the danger and a possibility, and then fragmentized or reduced to atom. There may be a blockage to the possibility. So I don't want to go into a naive discussion just about the possibility, but the evolution of technology, now it is advanced to AI. AI is not offering a service tailored to our taste. They are teaching us or telling us what we like by deep learning. They are feeding back the deep learning to humans. So nature and objects or goods, in a goods, the abstract product, the cultural context is included in the goods. And then to persons and environment, the virtual experience is included. And those things are reiterated to humans by deep learning of AI. So we are given an understanding of who we are and what we like or what we do through the deep learning of AI. And I want to observe that more into detail, and then translate that in a language again. Yes, that's all from me. Thank you. Thank you. From the audience,
Okay, I'd like to move on to the next question, which is about
cultural products ですね。それに関する
culture
ございます。
or cultural
一般
products.
品が素材としての意味しか帯びていないということは、
Cultural
なかなかそういうことが
products
ありました。
have the significance of material as it is. I resonate with that idea. It is just about subculture. What is happening in the field of a traditional culture?
僕は素材としての側面しかない。これ僕はその短い講演ですので非常に極端
So
な
because
話を
my
して
lecture
しまい
is
まして、
really
それ
short,
だ
so
け
I
では
just
ないと思うんですけど、
simplified when I was
素晴ら
saying
しい
that the
コンテンツも
cultural
作られて
product
ます
is
し、
a
その
material. However,
歴
it's
史を
not
再
just
解釈したりとか、
that.
歴史解
So
釈する
there are
中で非常
wonderful
に
contents
多様
or
性を持たせ
through
る。
the
でそれによってまたもう一つの歴史を
reinterpretation of the
みんな
history,
共有し直すというふう
we
なところ
are
もあると思います。
sharing our
言語文化
culture
も同
once
じです
again.
よ
That
ね。
is another
ですので
aspect of
一
the
概に
subculture,
僕
and
の
the
言っ
same
たよう
thing
な
can be
ネガテ
said
ィブ
to the
な
traditional
理
culture.
論につ
So
いてだけ解釈はできないと思います。ただですね、
the
僕はそう思うんですけ
interpretation
ど
of a
も、
culture
そ
is
ういっ
not
たそ
limited to the
の
negative
非常に
aspects
こ
which I shared with you
う産業
today.
化された文
However,
化、歴史、伝統
now
の
culture,
解釈
history, and
のこの
tradition are
制度
interpreted in the
の
area
中
of
では
industry,
どうしても
and
それ
with
以前の
that
時代
extent,
に文化や歴史や伝統が人間の
so the
成
way
り立ち、人間
culture,
的な
tradition,
抽象
and
的な意味ではなく
history
て、ある種の人の集団、それが地域ごとであれ、ジェンダー的であれ、もしく
impacted
は
the group of
非常
human
にこう親
being
密な集団
in
の中
terms
であ
of
れ、
the
親族であれ
gender
何
or
であれ、
culture or
そういっ
kinship
た
or
人間の集
any
団
kind of the closer
の
circle.
形成のされ方、
So
その
toward the
中で
formation
文化
of
され、
such a
話
group
が
of
共有
human
され、
being,
そしてその
there
国が
were
再解
stories
釈される。
shared,
そういう可能性って
experiences
いうものが、
where
やっぱり
we
産業だけ
interpreted
が独
the
占す
kind
る
of
文化と
possibilities
歴史と伝統の解釈の
were
商品化ですよね。
now lost in the movement that the tradition, culture, and history are interpreted in the entertainment industry. So when you look at the younger generation today, I think it's same for Japanese younger generation. So after the process of modernization, everyone is now experiencing tradition or encountering tradition through the lens of media. And under such circumstances, now the experience is now becoming into the format or the reduced into the mere skeletons. That is for sure. Next question is from Chihiro Sugiyama. We have kids canteen, volunteer for elderlies, and the child care support to prevent child abuse, and we do have welfare office for challenged people. However, these are all separated, and some organizations are just trying to making monies out of these activities. When I was younger, there were communications of the community, and there were mutual assistance in the community without thinking about making money. I think it was because I was in the bubble, the era, but I want that this kind of assistance will happen more. So actually, the situation is same in Korea, and before we had something called mutual child care, and there was a city that the like-minded people gathered together to have the mutual assistance for childcare. However, again, that this is happening in the clean society. So there are people who have the same kind of academic record, and if we have the same level of salary, get together to keep and they protect the homogeneous the environment. But I'm not saying that this art practice was completely wrong. However, no matter what you do or whenever direction you go, there's always ambiguity. And still, we have to think about how to secure the places you can get relaxed. That is what we really have to think about. And the next question is from Jennifer Robertson. So there's the dark side of K-pop culture, such as the slave labor contracts or the sexualization of minors and such. However, that is the also the part of the K-pop culture, which has the soft power, and how that impact the emerging definition of a democracy in Korea. This is the point I was not really able to elaborate in my lecture. When we think about the impact of K-pop and K-culture to Korean democracy, rather than saying that in the changing process of K-culture, how to interpret Korean democracy, that was the main focus of my lecture today. However, as you mentioned, there's the slave labor contracts and the sexual misbehaviors. There are such problems And in Korean entertainment industry, there is a strong self-control is now happening, or the self-imposed restriction is now emerging. For instance, I introduced there were bad boys who were popular in Korean entertainment in the past, and what they were doing at school were come up on media for in the modern times. They will be taken away from the industry. For instance, if you did drinking at school or smoking at school, and when the photos of the time appear on media, then you will be taken away from the industry. And it might sound a bit problematic. However, for your past behaviors, there's a certain kind of reflections or the certain kind of reviews. And based on that, there could be certain kind of the activities. However, the current movement taken away all these kind of possibilities, and I am wondering if this is really okay. So when you interpret this in the context of democracy, when you mistake once, then you will not be able to do anything forever. And I am wondering if it's really okay to have the kind of mutual supervision or the monitoring in the society. I was wondering if this is really a healthy environment for democracy.
Dr. Ishii, if you also have a comment, please. Then the next question from Pak-san. We received two questions. Because of the time restriction, we can take only one question. One is about the civilian culture government, and the second question is about the asylum or the place to hide. Regarding the first point, due to time limit, I couldn't go into a detail on the history. But the second point, in Japan, my communication may not have been efficient or correct. I didn't want to take a contrast of Korea versus Japan, but in Japan also, Japan is going to have a lesser places to hide or lesser number of asylum, but in a different mechanism unique to Japan. The how the Japan is losing the asylum places of asylum as a function. That's what I wanted to say. So the both countries they are facing the society that are losing the asylums, but looking further detail, how they are losing asylum, they are different in Japan versus Korea. That was my point. Next question is, in Korea, the secondary market, is there economic value in a secondary market? Of course, yes. 100% yes. And to young people, the sellers and buyers, they take certain risk, but they can buy it at a cheaper price, especially among the young people. The secondary item trading is very popular. And at the same time, in that phenomenon, person to person and a person to goods relationship, there are slight gap, and reinterpret that gap was what I attempted to do. Okay. Next item is on the capital. regarding a relationship of K culture and capital. And speaking of a culture-oriented nation, the state power intervention sounds like a significant, but the success of the K culture as a cultural industry, is it to pursuing more economic power to have a better life? Is it also one of the driver of the cultural industry? How does capital play in terms of its role for the cultural industry? It's not really assistance or support from the government to the culture, because it was a censorship and a regulation and a control, and no longer those things were done by the government and on. When the censorship and the regulation and also the control is reduced, so it is easier to invest. So when government did something on the cultural oriented nation, it is not about the investment or assistance from the government. It was a deregulation as an industry and also freedom of expression. So that was an elimination of the censorship. So in that wide context, the easing of the regulation promoted the investment, and investment on the return. Looking at the return on investment perspective, the K culture, finally, the capital invested is generating profit. That is the current situation. Of course, the productions who made big money, there were many productions who earned a lot of money, but in the initial phase, the investment was done by venture capital or the enterprises to this culture. But right now, K culture, not necessarily everyone succeeds. It is a widening disparity, and the pie is skewing to one pole. That is a current situation. Okay, the very last question. I want Professor Ishii to respond as well. Regarding a homogenization of agio, each agio is destroyed and then replaced with a one big agio in a society. That's what you talked about. And this type of tendency, the individualism or the collection-oriented perspective in East Asia. Which one does it demonstrate? Collectionism. It is both and neither. That is my answer. Agio, homogenization, or agio being taken away. I think that is a main topic of today. But I don't think agio never goes away. But in so far, Han-san talked about the agio when you were young, but no longer you find those agio. And what is the agio that we have in the current society? That's what you are analyzing. So in a summary, definition of the politics, I really like your definition on the politics in the undefined area or toward undefined area. Any kind of a language-based activity or the actions or attitude, that is politics. The issue of agio is how we secure space in a political context. We are political beings, so agio will never go away. And the clean democracy is being advanced, but the other this orchestrated element is required in politics. And that's what's described in the context of agio. That's my understanding. If it's individualism or collectionism, I think it's both. It is very individualistic tendency, which hollowed out the asylum, and collectionism is also hollowing out or the fossilizing the new liberalism. And as Ishii-san said, agio is a political things. So it is going back to the starting point. And then is it going to gain the standard or the standard, or will it take a shape again? This reiteration is really the whole process. So the place to hide from the criticism. So we can call it as an asylum, but if we don't have the asylum, the controlling power to be reviewed and reformed, that possibility will be lost as well. And historian Amino Yoshihiko says, this is this awareness or consciousness of a boundary. That's how he defined it. So individuals and collections. How do we secure the area of a boundary? And when it is fossilized, the asylum is lost. And in East Asia, the boundary of the individuals and groups in after 2000 or 2020, this fossilization is being getting faster. That is my take. Agile is required in going forward. So I concur your comment. Today, it was very intriguing and meaningful discussion. So hollow cleanliness, I really find it relevant. It's symbolistic and abstract concept. And what is the significance and meaning we find in that word? I think you made a great proposition. Thank you very much. Professor Kim and Professor Ishii, and to the audience, thank you very much for your participation and the time. Now we are concluding the session. Thank you.